Welcome back, gamers. I'm Joseph Kyle Rogan with Liminoid Games, and today I'm going to discuss some of the more advanced rules of the newest family-weight expandable game from Funko, Star Wars Rivals. The instruction sheet does a pretty good job of laying out the basics and getting players started, but the strategy and complexity of this game runs pretty deep. This is the first game of this kind for which Funko has published an FAQ, and there are quite a few details explained in that FAQ that are completely missing from the instruction sheet. Some of these details actually come up fairly often in the game, and if you don't understand them, this game can get pretty confusing. So today I'm going to explain 3 important rules for Star Wars Rivals that are not explained in the instructions. Rule number 1, characters in the Bacta Tank are treated as if they are not in the game. Now, the Bacta Tank is not a location. For all intents and purposes, it's not even considered to be in play. You can deploy a character to the Bacta Tank, and some action cards can move characters to the Bacta Tank. But currently, once a character is in the Bacta Tank, there is no way to get them back out until the end of the round. Cards that move characters to new locations or even swap characters, none of them will remove a character from the Bacta Tank before the end of a round. And cards can only move characters to the Bacta Tank if they specifically mention the Bacta Tank. Remember, the Bacta Tank is not a location. And speaking of that, this Bacta Tank card right here, these Bacta Tank cards, these are not location cards. These are not even an official Star Wars Rivals card. It's a custom token we created at Liminoid Games since Funko didn't include these in Series 1. Now we're actually going to be giving away a pair of these tokens in a random drawing for our YouTube subscribers. So stay tuned at the end of the video for details. And now, back to the rules. Characters in the Bacta Tank do not share a location with any other characters that are also in the Bacta Tank, neither allies nor enemies. So Obi-Wan's card, I've defeated you before and I can defeat you again, won't place itself on the top of your action deck as long as Obi-Wan is in the Bacta Tank. As far as the game is concerned, any character in the Bacta Tank basically doesn't exist. Now, this does not mean you can't play an action card of a character in the Bacta Tank. Cards and characters are 2 different things, and you should pay attention to whether a card is referring to another card or to the character itself. Just because the character isn't in the game doesn't mean the cards aren't in the game. You can always play any action card. In fact, you must play an action card every turn. There's no way to avoid it, even if that card wouldn't do anything. And action cards of characters in the Bacta Tank often still do things. For instance, C-3PO's card, I Suggest a New Strategy, which lets you play 2 additional action cards, still works perfectly well, even when C-3PO is in the tank. Likewise, Clone Commander Cody's card will be Taking It Back the Hard Way, which lets you draw an action card, then reveal an action card from your hand and take its action, also works fine. But if a card refers to any attributes of a character in the Bacta Tank, such as the character's location or influence, or a card tries to do anything to or as a result of an attribute of a character in the tank, then that part of the card does nothing. So, for instance, Ahsoka's card, You Don't Have to Carry a Sword to Be Powerful, doesn't work if Ahsoka is in the Bacta Tank. The card will try to give +1 influence to Ahsoka, but can't because she's in the tank. Then it will try to check Ahsoka's influence, but can't, and therefore it can't change the influence value of Ahsoka's allies. This card basically does nothing when Ahsoka is in the tank. Another good example is Snoke's card, For You All Is Lost. You can't put any influence loss tokens on Snoke when he's in the Bacta Tank, so you don't get to put any on enemies either. Other cards work partially. If C-3PO is in the Bacta Tank and you play his card, I Am Fluent in Over 6 Million Forms of Communication, you can still reveal up to 3 action cards from your deck, and you can still add them to your hand, but C-3PO won't receive the influence bonus. It's also important to note that this particular action card is only looking to see what characters appear on the cards, not what characters are in the game. So, if C-3PO is not in the Bacta Tank, but his allies are, C-3PO can still get the influence bonus for revealing his allies' cards. But other action cards are looking at attributes of the characters themselves. So, Wicket W. Warwick's card, "You're a jittery little thing," runs into trouble if you have characters in the Bacta Tank. This card checks to see how many of your characters have influence loss tokens on them, and then lets you play an extra action for each. However, if one of your characters with influence loss tokens is in the Bacta Tank, this card won't see them, and you won't get to play an extra card for that character. There are just a couple more wrinkles. So first, even though a character is in the Bacta Tank, that character's allies are still considered to be that character's allies. Otherwise, Obi-Wan's card, "A Great Leap Forward," often requires taking 2 steps back. It wouldn't be able to tell who Obi-Wan's allies were when he's in the Bacta Tank. So that card does still work. Likewise, just because a character in the tank doesn't have a location, cards can still see which characters are at other locations. So Tarkin's card, "We will deal with your rebel friend soon enough," still works when Tarkin is in the Bacta Tank. In other words, characters that are at locations are considered to be at different locations than characters that are not at locations. Whew, I think that does it for the Bacta Tank. So let's move on to rule number 2. Characters can never have enough influence loss tokens to take them below 0 influence. If you ever try to place influence loss tokens onto a character which would take that character's influence below 0, the tokens are not placed. They're simply returned to the token supply instead. So imagine that Snoke already has 4 influence loss tokens. Then you play his card, "There Has Been an Awakening." You try to place 2 influence loss tokens on Snoke, but you can't because that would make his influence level negative. You can only place 1 token. The other is returned to the supply. Thus, you can also only move 1 ally since you only placed 1 token. There are several dark side cards that work this way, where you're limited in the number of tokens you can place, and you don't get any extra bonuses for tokens that you tried to place but couldn't. So this all seems pretty simple on the surface, but let's do a bit of a deep dive into how changes to influence actually work in this game. The devs have stated they did not want to end up with a complex layer system for effects, like the one that exists in Magic the Gathering. So instead, all changes to influence have an immediate effect. Basically, an effect will make a change to the character's current influence, and then the effect itself will cease to exist. So it doesn't matter what kind of effect it is, whether it sets the influence level or increases it or doubles it. The only thing that matters is the chronological order in which the effects happened. Then, at the end of each round, the character's influence level returns to its base influence minus any influence loss tokens still on it. This seems fairly straightforward, but it can have some weird results. Sometimes it requires us to ignore influence loss tokens, and sometimes we even have to differentiate between influence loss tokens that are placed on a character at a different time. Let's look at an example. Ahsoka and Yoda are on the same team. Yoda has 5 influence loss tokens on him, bringing his influence down to 1. Then Ahsoka plays, "You don't have to carry a sword to be powerful." She'll get a +1 influence bonus, bringing her influence up to 6. Then Yoda's influence goes up to 6 as well. This effect doesn't remove the influence loss tokens. It just ignores them until the end of the round, when Yoda's influence will reset. Good so far? Next, General Grievous places 4 influence loss tokens on Yoda. Now, you might be thinking, hold on there, Yoda only has a base influence of 6. You can't put 9 influence loss tokens on him. He should only ever be able to receive 6. Well, not really. Currently, Yoda's influence is 6. The 4 influence loss tokens he already has are being ignored this round. If we put 4 more influence loss tokens on him, his influence will still be positive, at least for the moment. To help keep this straight, the FAQ suggests you place the influence loss tokens in 2 piles. A pile of tokens that were placed before Ahsoka's action, and then a pile of tokens that are placed after Ahsoka's action. So Yoda's influence is now 2. But we're not done yet. At the end of the round, all influence levels will be reset to the base level minus any influence loss tokens. Now we have a problem. At this point, the 8 influence loss tokens on Yoda would bring his influence level down to -2. This is not allowed. So at this point, the excess influence loss tokens fall off Yoda and are returned to the token supply. Going into the next round, Yoda will have 6 influence loss tokens in a single pile and an influence level of 0. If Yoda wants to score any locations, he'll probably need to visit the Bacta Tank. Next up, rule number 3. If a card lets you play extra actions, you have to finish resolving all of them before anyone can score a mission. While the devs were able to avoid a complex layer system for influence effects, they weren't so lucky when it comes to action cards that let you play additional action cards. It looks like they were also trying to avoid creating an action system like the one in Dominion. In retrospect, the end result is probably a bit more complicated than it needs to be. The issue resolves around when you can and cannot score mission cards. The FAQ states that you cannot interrupt the resolution of an action card to score a mission. You have to wait until all parts of the action card are done resolving. This becomes a problem when you have characters like C-3PO, Wicket W. Warwick, and Yoda, who all let you draw extra cards and play extra actions. Look at C-3PO's mission on his card. I suggest a new strategy. To score this mission, you must have at least 4 other action cards in your hand besides this one. Let's say that because Yoda is a hologram, you have this card and 3 others in your hand, and all 3 of your characters have influence loss tokens. First, you play Wicket's card, You're a Jittery Little Thing. Because of the influence loss tokens, you get to play 3 more action cards. While you're playing those action cards, though, the original You're a Jittery Little Thing is still resolving. We basically have 2 layers of resolutions, with each additional action card being resolved in the first layer, and You're a Jittery Little Thing resolving in the second layer. Next, you play Yoda's card, A Prophecy That Misread Could Have Been. This lets you play another action card and then draw 3 more cards. At this point, you have 2 cards in hand, and we have 3 different layers of action cards resolving. Using the extra action from A Prophecy, you play the Fear of Loss. This is a path to the dark side. You remove the influence loss tokens from Yoda's allies, and you get to draw 2 cards. Now you have 3 cards in hand. That completes the resolution of the 3rd layer, and we go back to resolving A Prophecy. You now get to draw 3 more cards, bringing your hand size up to 6. At this point, you might like to score C-3PO's mission, but you can't. You're still in the middle of resolving 2 layers of action cards. You still get to play 2 more action cards as part of resolving You're a Jittery Little Thing. And scoring the mission right now would mean you're interrupting the resolution of an action card. But if you play 2 more cards to finish resolving You're a Jittery Little Thing, you will only have 4 cards in your hand, and then you won't be able to score the mission. So, you can play 1 more action card, leaving you with 5 cards in hand. But at that point, you're forced to make a choice. You can either play another action card, or you can finish resolving You're a Jittery Little Thing without playing another action card so that you can score 3PO's mission. Remember, You're a Jittery Little Thing says you may play the extra action cards. You can choose not to. But once you've chosen not to, the resolution of the card is over and you can't go back to change your mind later. As you can see, this game can get real complex real quick. Now, keep in mind that all of these rulings are subject to change. The devs are still discovering some of the unusual corner cases that pop up from time to time. Their goal was to create extremely simple rules that are easy to understand and apply, but as they discover the implications of certain rulings, they've been known to change their mind about how certain cards operate. The rulings I've laid out in this video are based on both the FAQ and discussions with the devs on the official Discord server. They're up to date as of this moment, but there's no guarantee they won't change over time. And we haven't even gotten into the subject of printing errors on the cards. For these reasons, I encourage you to stay up to date by joining both the official Star Wars Rivals Discord server and the Liminoid Games Discord server, where we post the most up-to-date version of the official FAQ and the most accurate spoiler of the correct texts of every card. Now, if you stayed with us this long, it's time to reward you with a giveaway. We're giving away a pair of custom dark and light side Bacta Tank tokens with exclusive artwork from Liminoid Games. To be eligible, you need to do 3 things. Like this video, subscribe to the Liminoid Games YouTube channel, and join the Liminoid Games Discord server. We'll be holding a random drawing on that server in 2 weeks on Sunday, September 17th. There's a link to the server in the comments below. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and once more, I'm Joseph Kyle Rogan with Liminoid Games.